Okay. So how did the homework go?
It went. I wasn't able to do all of it. I was able to get the authentication working and was trying. I mean, the Firebase authentication, and I just ran into just a couple of issues. I'm not that familiar, other than in this class with Angular JS. So I had to research a lot of just simple things to just get them working, like ng-click, for example. I wasn't that familiar, so I had to do a little bit of research with that, so that lengthened the process. Hey, Zach.
Okay. So you said you have normal authentication working, so you have a screen that has, enter your username and password in, and you click the button, and
it goes up in the Firebase console.
Okay, so you went into the Firebase console and just manually created accounts.
No. I did it in the application I made, and they would show up in the authentication tab in the Firebase console, so it works. Is what I'm saying.
Oh, okay. So that's registration.
Yes.
Okay, so you have the ability for a user to register for an account. So you have two different web pages, right? So you have one web page that allows them to register, and then another web page that allows them to log in. Or do you?
Yes, but then I didn't take it anywhere after that. I mean, I said you're logged in, but it didn't go anywhere.
That's fine. Yeah. Gotcha. And how did it go for you, Zach?
I got the registration part down fine, and then I have the login, but it doesn't seem to be like. I put in the right thing, and it just doesn't connect with the server.
Doesn't connect with
the... let's say the username was, Zach Shapiro, and then the password was 134. I put it in, but it doesn't say that I logged in successfully.
Okay. Are you sure that your function is getting called? Did you debug it to the point where you know that your button is sending the username and password to your Angular function and then trying to authenticate?
I had to do that. What? Are you sure that you put in your keys?
What? I can't hear you.
You put in your Firebase keys. The same thing happened.
I don't know. I'll check.
Yeah, if you just go to Firebase to your project and hit set up for web, it'll give you your keys, and you just paste that into the body right at the end.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I think that's what I was missing. Okay, then.
That's how. Yeah.
Let me share my screen here, and let's kind of look at the next steps. All right. So you guys start off at Firebase. And you created an account, and right now you're doing everything on the Angular side, right? I think I also gave you a Node tutorial to look at.
I didn't really know what to do with that.
I just wanted you to go through the tutorial, so you were introduced to how Node works. Because I didn't
read everything in depth. I skimmed over it and got some of the basic points, but I didn't memorize this. And yeah.
Okay. All right, so let's kind of look at this. So we decided the last time that we're doing this project around Yu-Gi-Oh cards, right?
Pokemon.
Oh, yeah, that's right, Pokemon cards.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So let's go back here. All right, so this is what we were talking about last time, Trevor, with where the Node server would ultimately end up being. So we were going to have that guy live on Heroku, and there would be this Node server, and this guy would know how to talk to the Pokemon API. It would know how to talk to Stripe if we were doing payments. So we kind of talked about some different APIs that we could have in here, and then it would also know how to talk to Firebase. But our Angular web app would also know how to talk to Firebase directly. So this is kind of the
intermediary.
Yeah, so this is kind of the different things that would exist here. So authentication and registration we would do directly. So this is the piece that you guys wrote for today.
Yes.
The Angular web app, talking, doing authentication and registration with Firebase.
Yes.
Okay. So now once you've logged in, so let me go ahead into Firebase here. And I'm going to go ahead and let's just create a new project here. We'll call this guy Pokemon.
We'll just watch you.
Say this again.
Did we do this as well, or just watch you?
Well, you guys should have already done this.
No, I mean, like, you're making a new project right now.
Yeah.
We already made it.
You're right. I'm just kind of duplicating what you guys did for a second. So you don't have to do this as well. So just so we can get to the next part. So, I'm going to go to Firebase. I'm going to create a Pokemon project here that's going to, have these different pieces set up. Because what we want to do is we want to talk about how do we handle roles. Because we're going to have kind of two different types of people that can log into our application. If you remember what we talked about.
Yeah, I figured out how to assign different properties to each user.
Yep.
But that was like late last night, and then this morning I just didn't have any time to implement it.
Okay.
Like adding different properties to the different users as they register.
Okay. So we'll look at that here in a second. So.
Oh, Zach, you might have also had to enable login in here. If you go to sign in method, Michael, you have at the top next to users under authentication. Yeah, right there.
Yep, that's what I'm doing here.
Yeah, you have to enable email login.
Yep.
So.
I think I did that, but I'll check.
Yeah, so we'll enable that guy. So we're just going to have email and password login for this.
Yeah.
Okay. And that should be all we need to do for that piece right there. And today we're going to start looking at the database side of things for how we can handle authentication. So I'm going to go into database as well. This is our starting point for our database. There's nothing in there right now, but we're going to look at how do we write stuff to that database. Okay. So just for the time being, since I don't want to spend time doing a registration screen, I'm just going to go into auth and I'm going to add a user as if I registered. And I'm going to say ABC123 is my password. So I'll go ahead and add that user. So now I have this user added to the system. And notice this user has a user ID. And we want to look at how do we get that user ID programmatically after we log in. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and open up a second tab here for Firebase. Just to get me to the documentation screen. So we're looking at the web side of things, and this is kind of our script that we need to have for to include Firebase in our projects. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to grab all of that right there. So we're going to go ahead and drop that into our one of our pages here. So let's go ahead and create a login page. All right, so I'm going to do file, new file. We're going to save this guy. And we're going to save this. I'm going to do this in my Dropbox. We'll just start a new project.
If you go to the console and you go into your project, it gives you that, but it fills out all the API keys and stuff for you.
Oh, sure. But I'm just creating a new place to put our actual project here.
Okay, yeah.
So we'll call this guy Pokemon. All right, and then the file we're going to put in here, we're going to call this guy index.html. Okay, that's that guy there, and for the moment, let me paste that stuff in, and then I'm going to go ahead and grab some of this other code. So there's our Ajax stuff. Okay, so now we need to go ahead and put our configuration stuff from our application into this guy here. We're not going to have a storage bucket yet, but we'll have a database and a auth domain. So we'll go in here, we'll go to our Firebase console. Right, and I'll steal this guy right here because that actually has our keys and stuff like that in it.
Yep.
So I'll steal this piece right here. All right, so that should have our actual API key, our auth domain, all that jazz in there. Okay, so now what I want to do is we're going to just modify our code here. So we have our app and our controller. I'm going to get rid of this select stuff because we're not going to be using that yet. And we'll just give ourselves a username and a password. All right, so we're going to say username. And then we'll have input type is equal to text. And then ng bind username. All right, and just so we have something we can quickly reference, let's go to not Ajax. Go to our Angular W3 school stuff, just so we have code we can grab from. Oh, ng model rather, yeah. And then password, input type is going to be password.
Do you use Bootstrap in your projects?
I usually don't, but there's no reason why you can't.
Yeah, I did it. I used it in the first iteration of trying to do this.
Okay. How did
you use Standard CSS?
Do I use Standard CSS? Is that what you're
Yes.
asking? It depends. I mean, so a lot of times I will use Bootstrap if I'm making a larger application that needs to work in both mobile and full-size desktop web screens, just because Bootstrap does all that for you. I would say more times than not when I'm writing an application, I start off by not worrying about how it looks. So I just put junky text boxes and stuff like that just to get it functional, and then I can go back and facelift it and make it look better. So I worry more about functionality than appearance. That's why I don't use Bootstrap, at least initially. We will talk about Bootstrap in here, but effectively, have you heard of Bootstrap before, Zach?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's just a CSS library. That's it. Okay, so let's go ahead and give ourselves a give ourselves an Angular button here.
Yeah, that's what I needed to research a lot too, like getting it all to work and how to trigger the function.
Mm-hmm.
I had a lot of trouble with that initially.
Yeah, so it's this ng click. Click thing that ends up happening. All right, so it would look something like this guy.
Yeah.
And that was from one of our earlier sessions, but I know I wasn't recording those then, so that's why I am recording the one today, so you guys will be able to go back and reference this, even though you're both here. All right, and we'll call this function login. All right, and we're going to rate the function down below, but we'll test this here in a second. So let's go back and grab our example of our function. Just grab that guy there. So here's our app, here's our controller. I'm going to get rid of all that jazz. There's our function. And right now that function isn't going to do anything, but it's still a function. Okay. All right, so, and we want to be able to try to log in now with try to log in with our Firebase stuff. Usually what I'll do is I'll prove that I'm getting in here by doing some console write stuff or something like that, but I think we probably know that it's going to give us our username and our password from these two guys. So if I go in here, and actually here we can test it up here real quick. I'll just do that, and we'll say username concatenated with a space, concatenated with password. That should just prove that those two things are kind of coming through. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this welcome and the Zach test thing, so we just have our index. So one of the things we're going to look at today is single page applications. So we're going to have all this kind of live on a single page. All right, so let's go ahead and load up this screen. So we're going to open a file, and I have this in my Dropbox under Pokemon. And let me blow this up some. Okay, looks like that stuff is linked correctly, so we're able to grab those things. So now we want our login button to actually log us into to Firebase. So let's go back to our authentication. So I'm in the Firebase documentation here. I'm under authentication for web. We'll go to password authentication. We already enabled email password sign-in on here. This would be what you would use for the registration screen. I'm kind of avoiding the registration screen right now just for time period. It's not an overly difficult thing. But here's our sign-in dealie. So I'll go ahead and steal that code. Okay. Oops, sorry. So inside my function here, we're going to do our Firebase auth sign in with email and password. And we're going to pass it our email and password. So our email is called scope username. And our password is scope password. All right, and this is the potential error that we might get. Alright, so this would be our error code. This would be our error message if there was anything. Okay, so for right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and say scope.error is equal to error message. Say it like that. And actually, well, that'll be okay for right now. So up here now, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to just type in error there. So that should be directly linked to our scopes error. Okay, so now what's going to happen is when we click our button, it should call our my function. And actually, just for the, well, let's see what the message says. I'm wondering if the message will say anything on successful login. So we'll test here in a second. But we'll get our error message. We'll store it in our scope variable called error. And then up here, right underneath our password, where we're currently showing username and password, we should have our error message appear. Initially, it won't have a value, so nothing will be there. So let's go back here. I'll refresh this. So nothing's there. I'll go ahead and type in my username and password, and I'll type it in correctly this first time. I'll hit login. All right, nothing popped up because I'm assuming there was no error message. I'll type in a bad password. Let's see if we get an error.
And what constitute as a bad password?
Just something that wasn't the password that I chose for my user. You know, I just banged on the keyboard a couple times. So.
Okay, yeah.
Not my actual password. That guy.
Sorry, yeah, I did. Yeah, sorry. I thought you were still signing up. Like, if you're signing up, is there anything that constitutes as a bad password?
Yeah, I think Firebase has some.
I think it was like under 4 characters.
Yeah, they have some rules associated with that. I don't know it off the top of my head, but they do have some stuff.
Okay.
All right, so let's try this one more time. There's my Firebase. Okay, we might need to bring Firebase into our controller here. We'll see here in a second. Okay, so let me just try the error code instead of our... I'm going to name this guy error code just in case error was already taken. Okay, so it looks like that is not showing up. So let's look at our developer tools. And our console. Doesn't look like we're getting a error message.
No.
All right, so let me just do a console log. Pretty sure that's the console.log here. Let's just make sure we're getting to that code there.
Point.
Yeah, that login button doesn't seem to be doing. Button ng click me / button. Called it my function there. This guy up here. Oh, it's called login here. I didn't rename it down here.
Yep.
That would work.
Okay.
That would make sense.
Okay. Yep. We're getting legitimate error messages now.
There's nothing. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I can't see what it says.
Yeah. I don't. Let me see.
It basically says there's nothing in the email box.
Oh, there we go. I can. Blow.
Okay, I got it.
I can blow it up. You guys can see it now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's my Gmail. ABC 1 2 3. Click that again. Oh, I wonder after the error message if it didn't work again. Okay. That at gmail.com. ABC 1 2 3. Click login. Okay, so that should have
log here.
All right, so there's here. All right, so there's their error. That was for a bad password. Okay, so that one's good. That's a bad password. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, so that was the auth wrong password. Okay, so that's correct. So that is for my error code, right? So the error code is actually coming back with things like auth, bad password, that kind of stuff. Let me do a... Let's just always write the code. So we'll log the code because we're printing it out up here is a little bit sketchy. Okay, so we'll try to log in. Here's our function. Function gets an error. I think that error is actually nil if everything worked fine. So that's why I want to see what this error code actually ends up being. And then we'll show how we can get information about that user, and then we want to look at roles. All right, so I'll refresh this. We'll go ahead and log in there. So that's our email must be a valid string. So we'll do awesomefat gmail.com. Log in again. Password must be a valid string. So again, we're getting the same same things. Okay, so we'll say ABC 1, 2, 3. Log in. Okay, so we get nothing from that guy when it works. I'll put a couple of characters on the end of my password. All right, so verify password. Something bad happened with the password. Here's the code. Auth wrong password. Okay, so now the question is why are we only getting output when something bad happens? And let me show you why. So here is our actual Firebase authentication thing here, right? So up to this, what I have highlighted there, this says use Firebase, use its authorization thing. Let's sign in with email and password. Here's the email, username. Here's our password. But then we're catching an error if one exists. Okay?
So you go if error is equal to null, then my console.log it worked.
Well, but so here's the punchline. Yeah. This has to do with a programming concept known as a try and catch. This function here only ever gets called if there is an error. If nothing bad happens, this stuff here will never get called because we have no error to actually catch. That's why we're only seeing our print stuff when something bad happens. Make sense?
Yep.
All right. So let's go back here to our. We'll make this guy error message again, and we'll set this equal to error message. And we'll take out the rest of this. And we'll go ahead and throw our thing for our error message back in here. So that'll just show up underneath our password when something bad happens. And we'll go ahead and put another break just for spacing in there. All right. So what happens here? We try to log in, and only
going to move the login down if there's a message.
The login button will always now have a little bit of a bigger space between the things. So visually, it'll just always have a bigger space. Whether that's good or bad is arguable, but okay. But this stuff here will only happen if there was a problem. Okay, that's what this catch thing is all about. All right, so let's refresh this. Login button's a little bit lower than it used to be. I'll go ahead and click login here. Notice it's saying you must have a valid string. Notice this is giving us an error message before we get our error code. So this isn't even a catch thing. This is actual error because we haven't called the function properly. Okay, so what does that tell us? That tells us that this catch deals with the result of signing in with email and password, the result of this function. Right now, what we pass this function, our username, is not an appropriate input. So we have not gotten a result at this point. We've gotten an error because the inputs were bad. So let me go ahead and give it good inputs now, not necessarily correct inputs. Just bang on the keys a little bit. Okay, we'll hit login there. And let's see, it says verified password. So does that mean that that login message doesn't have anything in it? Or the error message doesn't have anything in it? It might be that the code is the only one that has stuff in it. Yeah, auth, wrong password. So there's our, there's their information. If I type in the correct thing, ABC123, everything is legit. So we want to be able to handle that correct login since an error isn't being generated. So let's go back to the documentation here. All right, so this is catching an error. This is how we might sign out. But what I'm going to go ahead and do here is inside of our code. Let me go to the auth reference. So here's our error codes we could possibly get. Invalid email, user is disabled, user not found, wrong password. Okay, now this function actually returns something. Okay, when it returns, it returns a Firebase user. All right, so that function, that login with sign in with email and password, returns an actual value. All right, so we want to store that value. So we're going to say var user is equal to the result of Firebase auth, sign in with email and password, giving it the username, giving it the password, deal with bad stuff in here. If we're still kicking, we're going to go ahead and we're going to say scope dot user is equal to user dot, I'm going to say UID. I'm pretty sure that is the, we'll check it here in a second, but I'm pretty sure that's the right thing. Actually, let's just say UID here for right now. So we'll change this to UID. So that's going to be the user ID of this user. All right, and that should match, assuming we're authenticating correctly, that should match. If I come into Firebase here, I go under auth, that should match this guy right here, proving that we can uniquely identify a user. All right, because then what we're going to move towards is how can we now use the database to map additional information related to that user. All right, so let's see if we can get that user information to show up on the screen. Go back in here. Put in the correct information. Okay, it must not be UID like that. Go back to our, it's a Firebase user. Should give us some documentation for our user. User has a display name, an email, email verified, is anonymous. Authentication provider ID for the current user. Refresh token. Oh, it does have a UID. Let's just try displaying the entire user just for a moment. So here's our user, here's our, I'm going to just put it inside of user ID. That should be the return value of sign in with email. We might need to do a .then on this. We'll see here in a second. Refresh this. Okay. Man. All right, so this is an Angular error that I forgot a semicolon here. Same problem. Functions. It does not like me storing this user information inside of a variable. Let's make sure that's the case here. And actually, just for testing purposes, I want to do something here. I'm going to say scope.username is equal to that, and scope.password is equal to abc123. So that way I won't have to type in the username and password every single time. It'll already be bound to that box. So that stuff's already there. So testing should go more quickly. Okay, so that seemed to work. But now we want to get access to this user. So let me do a console.log of user. And let's see what that guy looks like, the result of this function. Okay. So this is what the guy looked like. Here's the email, was awesomefat@gmail. There's a refresh token. Here's the UID. Okay. So there's that person's UID. So we see that coming through. So this is the user object that was returned for us by the sign-in. All right, and we would need to be able to extract certain pieces of information from that. So let me try to extract user.uid to the console. Okay, yeah, so that's, we must be trying to get it wrong. So let me save that again. We just need to get the actual user ID out of it. Let's go back into documentation here. Here's a user. Here's user info. Let me try just getting this user's user info. See if that gives us what we're interested in. Still undefined. Okay, let's just do this. Firebase web get UID. Yeah, that's a different. Yeah, this is the old Firebase documentation.
Yeah, a lot of that data is outdated. Trust me.
Well, this is the
Google search was turn that up, and
yeah. This is the new
outdated.
This is the new way of getting it, and that guy is supposed to return. Let's go back one more level. All right, so this guy returns a Firebase Promise, which contains a non-null Firebase user. So let's look at this promise. So an issue we have here, so this is asynchronously signing in, which means that it's signing in the background. So an issue we might have is there is no guarantee that when we get to this line right here, that we have our our final answer, that we have this user. So we need to be able to get that information for this. So let's go to guides, web. Okay, here's the then. then function user. Actually, well, that should be the end of. Yeah, here's our result. Then function result. Steal this so we can edit it a little bit. I think this is going to give us that's going to be our scope username. This is going to be our scope password. Here's our then for result. Provider, result, UID, function errors. So rather than catching, we can just have an error. Okay. So we'll go ahead and just do that. Alright, so we'll use Firebase to sign in, same username and password. Since this happens asynchronously, which means that it does not block, we need to know when it finishes, and that's what this then clause is for. So after it's done signing us in, then have this function which gets a result. Use that result to show, I think it's provider ID and result ID, so I think this is not going to give us anything special, but the result will. So let's actually just give ourselves, because we're interested in that user ID, that's what we really want to get. And in the event that something bad happens, we'll have our error, and we'll set our error message equal to that. Let's give that a shot. Let's have an extra parenthesis somewhere. So open. There's our login.
Is that after password? No, that's right.
Password. Yep, this is the original function here. Here's the then, open, close. That's fine. That's fine here. I think this is fine here. It says on line 34. I don't think that doesn't look right to me.
Maybe you should just remove the whole thing on 34.
I don't think so, because that is ending our app controller guy right here. So our app controller opens. Let me go back here.
Do you need another one?
Yeah, that's the real question, is do we need one that finishes this, but I don't think so. Controller, so let me go to this. So there's my app controller. It opens, it closes there, so that part's right. Here's the open of that. Here's the closing of that. Here's our scope, login. Here's a function. This function has this stuff. And here, let's indent correctly. I think we are missing one. So then this guy here needs to have that. That closes this function.
Right.
This closes this guy. Okay, save that. Function here. Just for the sake of argument for a moment here, let's just take that stuff out. That out. Okay, so it's okay with that up to that point. Oh, that's the issue. Okay, so let's make sure that that is good there. It is. Then we can paste that in there. Let's make sure that's good there, and it is. Okay. Yep, there we go. So username, password, authentication is okay. Here's our user ID for the guy who actually was authenticated. And just to further prove we'll do a console log out here. Auth error, and this guy is going to have a error .code there, so that'll be our output for that. Save that. That's going to give us that. Let me just put a couple other things there. And there's our auth error, auth wrong password. All right. So now we're able to get the actual user ID of the dude who was logged in. Okay.
What's the homework? To work on the two types of admins and the users?
Yeah. So let me give you. You got like 2 or 3 more minutes here.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me give you some direction for that. Now that I showed you how to get the UID. So this is going to have to do with our using the database. All right. So let me go back here. We'll go to web. We're going to go to real-time database. Go to get started. So what you want to do, and let me give you a link. I'll give you a link right there. And that. So we'll do next homework. So what you want to do is you want to modify your register screen to add a role for the user being registered. such that we can...
So just let them pick like a checkbox or something, or a radio button?
Either that or just hard code it, either way. You know, you could have two different registration screens. You could have register user or register admin if you wanted to, something like that. So kind of however you want to make it work, but have...
You want to give them a choice whether they want to be a regular user or another user, or just like add it in and...
Either way is fine. I mean, long term, you probably are going to give them a choice, but it doesn't really matter. That's not what we're trying to go after here. You want to just in a simple case, maybe you just have two separate registration screens, one for registering normal users and one for registering admins. Okay.
Got it. So I can pretty much copy and paste my current code and then just add it in and then leave this one normal.
Correct. So when you're going to modify your registration screen so the user has a role such that we can look it up once they, so we can look up their role when they log in. So to do this, you're going to have to look at the database. And let me just give you some verbal instructions here. So I'll write it here too. So when registering the user, get the UID of the user just registered and create a entry in the database under a section for roles.
Like user/roles/the UID and then input their class.
That maps the UID to their role. So you can look it up. So finally, so the last piece of the homework will be, upon logging in, show the UID and their role to the console or screen. Doesn't matter either one. Just prove, right now when we log in, we're showing their user ID only because we're not storing the role anywhere. All right, so now you want to change the registration process to also keep track of a role. And then when they log in, look up their role based on, it'll be a second call to the database. Like, okay, I know who your user ID is now. Let me go find out what kind of user you are.
Can I recommend something?
Sure.
There's a website called Cobra.io, Kobra, and it allows, it was created with Firebase and Angular, but it allows you to, for free, just in real time collaborate on a text file. You don't need to log in. You can just go in and send the link.
Okay.
And you can just be an anonymous user, so we can see what you're doing like in real time.
Sure.
And possibly like edit or highlight stuff just to show you what you're thinking.
Okay. So we can mess with that next time. For this time, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and email you the index.html file I just created.
Perfect.
All right, so I'll email you. I'll email you a copy of this presentation just in case it's not on iCloud again. I'll give you a link to the video that I'll upload to YouTube, and I'll send you the HTML file. Sound good? And we're good for next week? Are both of you around for next week?
Okay. Yeah. All right.
All right. I'll see you then. You guys take care. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.